Dear Devil, what Liam wants for Christmas? I get confused with me Santa Claus and me Satan Claus, Chris.
Oh.
I say, it is the devil you're supposed to write to for presents, isn't it?
It depends what you're after.
Nothing good.
Then probably, yes, it's probably better that you message him rather than Santa.
Santa. Okay, right. Santa Claus is the old geezer that takes things away, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the paedophile in the red suit.
Pedophile in the red suit. Yeah, they always said to be aware of him. Stay away from him. In all seriousness, we are talking about writing letters today. We're talking about writing letter specifically. Dear Devil. Dear Devil is the name of this. Is actually a possessed nun's letter from the devil. So she wrote it, presumably, as some kind of under some sort of possession. This is some sort of channeled writing type stuff, which this episode was requested by one of our patrons, the Spirit Master, who was talking a little bit about this strange letter. I think it's not too dissimilar from the Voynich manuscript, if you remember. The Voynich manuscript, where they have documentaries and they were like, it's pretty but mysterious, and that's always good for National Geographic to make a documentary about a document that is pretty and mysterious, isn't it? Oh, we cannot tell you what it says, but it's probably bastardized Hebrew is normally what they come out with.
Pretty much.
So a little bit of backstory for everyone that's listening. There's this nun, Sister Maria, in a convent somewhere a couple hundred years ago, right? 300 odd years ago, I believe it was, but don't quote me on that.
Stigmata.
No, this isn't a stigmata. You keep your stigmatas to yourself. She's in the convent. Everything's hunky-dory. It's all fine. Probably a little bit of scissoring going on, but just keep that between the girls, right? So she starts acting out, Chris. Now, I know that, some children are known to act out. Teenagers are known to act out. Does one expect a seasoned nun to act out?
Well, no, I think that's why they've got Mother Superior, isn't it? To give them a good spanking.
Yes. Anyone that's gone to Catholic school should know. Mother Superior takes a no messing. Right, so anyway, Sister Maria, everything's fine, but then all of a sudden, what starts to happen during prayer time, not too dissimilar from reading time at school, actually. I had this guy called Luke, well, we called him Luke Dempster. Luke Dempster, his name was. And he used to act out. He was one of the problem children, Chris. The problem children, the naughty ones that come from a rough home, all that sort, need to be the center of attention, need to act out. During reading time, he'd just start playing up and screaming and bullying and such. Sister Maria wasn't a bullying, but she was doing the attention seeking by the seams of it. She was, during prayer time, when she was at the altar, she would go and start flailing about on the floor and passing out. Whether she was and did have a medical condition, or whether she was just, fuck this shit, there needs to be some action going on here because it's the same old day in, day out, right? I don't know. We'll never truly know, Chris.
She might have been bored.
Had a medical condition, was just fucking crazy, or was just troublesome, a little oik that wanted to cause all sorts of trouble. And the best way to cause trouble in a monastery or a nunnery is, of course, to bring the old devil into it all. So, Sister Maria would end up being a bit troublesome, She would be acting out. There was one time in confession. Have you ever done confession, Chris? Have you done a confession?
No.
You've never confessed nothing?
No, don't confess nothing.
Not even in a closet or a cupboard?
No. I'm not
'Cause you
spending
know,
any time in a closet with a priest. I don't think so.
if you're ever to do proper confession, you need to do it in a cupboard.
Oh, okay. They might get ideas above their station. I'm not sure it's a good thing.
Right, okay. So she was in confession with the priest, right? And she was confessing. But all of a sudden she changed. She started swearing and be really rather rude. Most un-nun-like. And then afterwards, when she came out of the closet, not as a lesbian, like back in the day, came out of the closet, she walked out and she is like, "Oh, did I call you a CNT, CUNT? I am very sorry, that was not me. I don't know what came over me." Wiping the ectoplasm off.
Yeah.
The
If in doubt, blame the devil.
father, whatever, the priest said, "I believe it was the devil came over you."
No?
I'm paraphrasing you. I don't know exactly what happened because I was not there. But basically, there was an incident where she was really rather rude during confession in some sort of confession closet, right? And then blamed it on the devil. Okay. Which is interesting because we are talking about Christianity, and we all know Christianity is but just one woman's lie about an affair that went really, really too far. But there we go. So she ends up, I do believe she might have been confined to her room, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm just going by Catholic school.
See, I don't get that because surely if the devil's been sneaking into her, you don't leave her on her own, do you? Surely you'd put her on night watch.
Maybe. I don't know. I would imagine they were all shitting bricks because they were worried that the devil's there. The wolf amongst the sheep, you know?
Oh, amongst the
Okay.
flock.
So Sister Maria either is getting even more possessed at this point, or she's thinking, "Can't believe I'm getting away with this. I am at this much shits and giggles for fucking decades," and decides to escalate things. So either she is possessed or she just mental schizophrenia or something, and or she's a fake and stuff. She thinks, well, I've been doing nothing but studying Arabic, Greek, Latin and such. That's all I do is study dead languages, right? I might as well put this knowledge to good use. Is there much way in which I can put that into good use? Well, fuck me now. I know what I'll do. I will compose a letter from the devil using my, for the time, somewhat decent knowledge of Arabic, Greek, runic alphabets, and Latin. Okay. So she either decides she's going to compose a letter from the devil using her linguistic skills, or she is genuinely possessed by the devil or some demon or spirit or something, and it decides to use her hand to write the letter. So it may be channeled work. Or on top of that, she could just be crazy. We've met crazy people, haven't we, Chris? They do crazy things, illogical things. Some would say that would be the go-to. I think that personally, if crazy people are illogical, I think the most logical thing to do if you are in a convent for years is probably to fake a letter from the devil. That's what I do. But anyway, so she ends up writing this letter, right? No one can translate it. It's all got crazy, like hieroglyphic type weirdo text, but she claims it from the devil. She claims the devil's kind of basically controlling her hands and stuff like that, right? So anyway, there's a little bit of a hoo-ha. I'm not entirely sure what happens to Sister Maria in the end, but the whole possessed nun's letter from the devil becomes somewhat famous and people attempt to translate it and such. Okay. So before I tell you what happens next, what's your thoughts on this, Chris? Where do you lie? Do you think she's crazy? Do you think it's the devil? Or do you think she's having a laugh? Proper ruffle. Is that what they call it? Roll on the floor laughing ruffle?
A ruffle.
Ruffling?
She might be ruffling. I think the likely to is either she's ruffling or it's possession.
Okay.
But of what I'm interested to find out. The reason I say that is more the fact that I think the chances of it being an elaborate ruse because it's crazy just seems less likely than her making it up.
Right. So you think she's either possessed or making it up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You don't think she's crazy? You
I
don't
don't
think
think
she's
she's
got
crazy.
schizophrenia or something like that? I don't know if we're allowed to call people with schizophrenia crazy or not anymore, but most people would say that that's cray-cray, isn't it?
It's not the only cray-cray, but
no, but that is what people have suggested that it is, because you hear in voices from the devil and demons and such, so they go to stereotypical schizophrenia.
Maybe. But yeah, I don't think it's likely, because I don't know. I think if she was just straightforward cray-cray, she wouldn't have got into the nunnery or the convent, because in those days she'd have already gone to a psych ward long before she was cray-cray.
Did they have psychology 300 years ago, or did they just have like Freud and shit?
No,
they would say that most of the back in the day, I mean, they did used to lobotomize people and stuff like that, and I've spoken to a number of psychologists, and they say they weren't actually practicing proper psychology. You see, nowadays it's
there's no such thing as proper psychology. It's all made up as they go along, isn't it?
You mean it's a pseudoscience? Or science is just something that gets better with age?
Maybe.
Like wine?
Maybe. I'm just thinking they've bottled it wrong if this is supposed to be a fine wine.
But wait. Let's not go any further. We need to tackle this one, right? So if physics ages like wine, it gets more mature, yeah. Are you saying that psychology ages more like milk and it's just getting worse? Or are you just saying it's just like a cheap shit wine? Or an alka-pop or something like that? It actually goes up. Are you saying that psychology is getting worse? Or are you saying it's just staying somewhat shit? Or are you saying it is getting better, but just, the rate of getting better is just not very good? What are you saying, Chris? Because we've got a lot of psychotherapists, psychologists, counselors and such that hang on our every fucking word.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find a suitable synonym, but essentially it's not quite aging like bad, soured milk.
Okay,
I'm thinking
so it's not that bad.
No, I'm thinking in some ways it's worse. I'm thinking that maybe what it is actually like is those people that don't really like drinking alcohol, so they discover cocktails, and they think if they mix them all up quick enough and swallow it fast enough, they won't have to deal with the shit that it tastes like.
Okay. Well, back in the day, like some of the psychologists and stuff, they would do the is it trepanation, where they drill in your head?
Yeah.
Drill into your head and like nastiness. And they used to like beat patients and lock them up and drug them and all that sort of thing. Nowadays, of course, they don't do the whole lobotomizing part. They don't do the drilling part, but they do still beat up patients and drug them and lock them in rooms without anything, essentially, for literally months on end. I can say that because there is a scandal currently in the UK which involves the NHS and a number of psych wards where they are actually doing that. There's a massive thing on the BBC, massive documentary about all this psychology. Oh yes, we don't do things like that nowadays. It's happening on a fucking massive scale, apparently. I thought it was fascinating, because the amount of psychotherapists and stuff I've said, oh, it's so terrible. We don't do such things like that. These are all actual nursing practitioners, Royal College of Nursing. These are all psychotherapists. These are all people that go on courses every single year about safeguarding and shit. And they are quite literally hitting people, drugging them, and putting them in a padded room with water dripping from the ceiling. So let's not pretend like we've come a really, really, really long way with regards to ethics and stuff like that, because people are just as nasty and corrupt and troublesome today as they were several hundred years ago, I like to think. Would you agree, Chris? I don't think humans have gotten that much better, have they? We're just better at like conforming and hiding it, thanks to the Victorians, surely.
Yeah, you're better at hiding it under the bed and people not knowing about it. But yeah, I think probably less violence, and the bit that worries me more is the overuse of chemical restraint, which is essentially drugging people, because there isn't enough of the NHS to go around, particularly in the mental health sector.
Yeah.
So how do you look after 5 times as many people as you need to? Well, if they're all cabbages, that's a lot easier to mind a garden than it is to actually supply real care.
Did you say there's not enough mental health to go around? I.e., you get the mental health team from the NHS, and you get them all in a room, and there isn't enough healthy mental health to go around. Not even for one of them.
No, I just meant there's not enough of mental health teams to cover everybody. So what tends to happen is resources are overstretched. So the easiest way to deal with everybody is to medicate, because this is Western medicine.
They did say this in the
keep them quiet and put them all together.
They were filming when they were asked with the staff and stuff like that. Oh well, we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the time and people and such like that. But I still don't quite understand why a nursing practitioner can sit on a really rather portly woman's stomach, slap her around the face and tell her she's fat, and then when she kicks off, then drug her and they take her away into another room. I think that there's no excuse for that sort of vile behavior.
But why? That's exactly what you'd do.
Yeah, but I ain't a nursing practitioner, Chris.
Oh, okay.
I'm a witch, and we have to do things like that, because otherwise people will think witches are good. And I've got to do twice as much bad shit as I used to, thanks to these fucking Wiccans trying to make out that we're all good. Earth-centered religion and all that, right? I know you're bad because you just threw a cat across the room. I literally saw you do it. Oh, evil. You're even cruel to animals. You're laughing, but it's true. I can see you on the webcam. He picked a cat up and he threw it across the room. And he was petting it for a bit like a Bond villain. And then I guess he thought, I'm done with you now. Picked it up and threw it. Chris, that's terrible. These animals, I know they're not familiars and such, but they are animals. They are alive, You should be able to, not see it as a pillow. It's a living thing. You might throw a pillow.
It was done appropriately.
It was done appropriately because cats always. You just done it again. You just done it again. You just picked the cat up and threw it again. Fuck's sake, Chris. I think you've had a bad week. But we get the RSPCA or the NSPCC, which is the one that deals with animals. It's not RSPCA, isn't it?
It's RSPCA.
Yeah, that's it. The NSPC one's the one no one gives a shit about, do they? Because no one cares about children. They just care about animals. We know that because of the Queen's funeral. How many people did I meet that were like, do you know what the saddest part? I was fine throughout all of it, but the saddest part was, when I saw the horses and the corgis. It's like, our kids are literally there, their mom, their grandmother, all that sort of thing. Dad, whole nation. Like, oh no, don't give a shit about that. I just care about the corgis. It's like they don't even fucking know who she was. What are you talking about? She didn't used to feed them. She had people do that for her. Anyway, we're getting on to the possessed nun's letter. So would you like to hear,
what a segue,
Patreon, the next step? So this is 300 years after, and this involves something called the dark web, Chris. Oh, the dark web. No, not the one in the corner of your room. The dark web is in the internet that you need like Tor and such to access, not normal internet, non-Googleable internet. Oh, so a group of scientists whose names I really couldn't care less about, they decide, oh, we got this thing, modern science and such, algorithms and such. What we'll do is we'll try and translate some of this devil letter and see what we come up with. And they happen to find and use, I don't know whether it was a full algorithm, but they came up with a inspiration from an algorithm that one of them found on the dark web, you see. And they worked on a way of using computers and such, but they didn't really have that back then. They might have had the abacus, but they didn't have like electronic computers hundreds of years ago. They tried to use these algorithms and such to try and translate it. And they fed into it various archaic languages and such, and it came out with 30% of the document could not be translated. 30% couldn't be translated, but 70% of the document made some sort of sense. Okay, now I've got some interesting extracts here that they came up with, but they did say that all of the stuff that was translated came from either Arabic, Greek, runic alphabet, or Latin, which, funnily enough, apparently that was what Sister Maria was actually studying at the time. So maybe she could have made it all up. But here's some quotes. Okay, there's 4 quotes I'd like to share with you. The first one, get your take on this. God thinks he can free mortals. ... This system works for no one. Ooh, bearing in mind this is supposed to be coming from the devil. So God thinks he can free mortals. ... This, presumably there's a little bit that can't be translated in between, and then it's this system works for no one. So we're presumably talking about Yahweh at this point, Christian God, presumably, or what? I don't know. But what do you think of God thinks he can free mortals? Free them from what? Because it seems like he likes putting things in servitude most of the time. I don't see much about freeing. I mean, I know there was the whole Moses thing in the desert and such, but he turned on them after, didn't he? From what I remember.
But while he was doing that, he didn't do anything with the Chinese, did he?
No, the Chinese keep themselves to themselves. We can't speak ill of the Chinese. They are going to be taken over in the next couple of decades. I've already started learning Mandarin.
Good. That's a wise decision. So,
yeah,
the Yahweh, but you've got to remember the Yahweh could quite easily say that because he doesn't belong here. So
he doesn't belong. What are you talking about? Just in your room, or are you talking about in this universe? What do you mean the Yahweh doesn't belong? He's been here for a while. I mean, how long have you got to take over a fucking universe to be able to claim squatters' rights?
A long time.
Well, how many are we talking? He's got about 1,000 years, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's a blink in the eye. Come on.
Well, I suppose it is. Hence why no one's noticed. well, hope humans have noticed.
So my thoughts is yes, maybe she's aware that he's a usurper. So yes, from a usurper's perspective, you would consider that to be freeing people, wouldn't you?
Maybe. So God thinks he can free mortals, but then the interesting bit I find is this system works for no one. So it implies that there is a system to the universe and such, some sort of structure, but it's some sort of natural system. So from my takeaway from it is we have but do you know what actually, I mean, going super conspiracy, like the conspiracy theorists will like this. My first thought was, oh, it's like that Stargate Atlantis program from back in the day. You know, there's a whole city, there's a whole system, there's a whole high level science and stuff like that. And then a bunch of cretins essentially come along, that'll be the humans, come along and they kind of got almost half a clue. But, you know, they kind of start fucking about. If that be the Yahweh, it's kind of like, oh, look, a system. I know I'll move in and I'll pretend I built it. You know, look, I can do all sorts of crazy ass magical tricks. Of course, when the Mesopotamians come back. And it's like that episode where some ancients come back from some frozen ship or something like that, and they like press a bunch of buttons that the people that were living in the city, the humans, didn't even know that were there, and then all of a sudden like crazy ass shit happens and stuff. Kind of like that. It's almost like a look at the future, but condensed into an episode of Stargate Atlantis. But there we go. Anyway, so what do you think about the system works for no one?
I suppose that would make the most sense. But to explain that, that's complicated. So to explain
We've
that,
got 5 minutes. Do your best, and
I'll
then
do
we'll
my
talk
best.
about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit with our next quote from the book. We might make them pay for that, though. See if you can chat for 5 minutes.
So the tricky part with that one would be what you consider working is, because that would suggest that it had a purpose. So if it has no real purpose, which that would really upset lots of people, if it has no purpose, or at least not in the way that people look at it. So from her perspective, she'd be going, "Oh, there's no order to this thing. Why is it just? It's just going around and around and around." When reality is obviously it's part of a much bigger machine, but we only look at this one cog, being our universe and the one that it's taken over by the Yahweh, which is tricky because it's not really taken over the whole system, though, has it?
No, but a large proportion of it.
Yeah, I suppose.
It certainly was enough for a big local political thing. It's bigger than the fucking shit that's going on in Ukraine.
Oh, yes, much bigger than that.
Much bigger than that.
But it's all about perspective, isn't it? So from her perspective, as a nun, already behaving under the Yahweh, it could be quite obvious. She could be just talking about the Yahweh system. She might not have
this system works for no one.
Yes, as in the Yahweh system works for no one because it just keeps everybody in the same loop over and over again. Like I said, it's tricky because you've got to know which perspective, having not read them all and seen everything that Mary says, is I'm having to assume what her level of perspective would be, because if she's looking from a higher point, then she would need to have wide enough vision to see that, and I'm not convinced that a child of Yahweh necessarily would.
Was she a child of the devil now? Okay,
even less reach there.
So basically there's two ways you could take this system works for no one. It could be like the shitty vending machine that we used to have at the swimming pool, which you put the money in, but the little turny thing would not release the chocolate. That machine works for no fucker, right? So it could be basically slated this is saying this God thinks he can free mortals, this system works for no one, as in this system shite, I don't like it, it's bullshit. Or it could be God thinks he can free mortals, this system works for no one, as in you cannot cheat the system. So she might be thinking even God cannot control completely the system or cheat the system.
Yes.
And some would even go so far as to say, what is the system? Oh, it must be some older philosophy. Like, can God thinks he can free mortals, okay, take them from heaven and keep them all bottled up in the astral to prevent them from reincarnating. If the system is reincarnation, can God cheat the system? The answer to that is yes. You yourself can create your own heaven and cheat the system for a bit. An eternity, only a lesser eternity, but an eternity nonetheless. To find out how to do that, join the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon and ask us how you yourself can cheat the system. Oh, goody. We got to do some selling bits, Chris, right? Because we're right at the end of the free bit. And next we're going to go to God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit walk into a bar. Ouch. But that's it for this episode of the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. You can listen to the extended edition by going on the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon.